Okay, I got the link.
Already, great. All right, I'm muted. Okay, we're gonna mute me.
Welcome to First Parish in Needham, a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1711 along with the town of Needham. We're a proud LGBTQ welcoming congregation, climate justice seeking green sanctuary, and level 2 sanctuary supporting congregation for immigration justice. Whoever you are, whatever your background, and wherever you're watching from, you are welcome here. I am Ann Barrett. I've been a member of First Parish for 17 years, and David and I raised our daughter in the religious education program. I'm currently serving on parish committee. I find the First Parish community, in addition to being my spiritual home, to be a place for lively discussions about important issues with members who are now friends. It is a place of solace and a place of support. It has also been, although via video, a source of comfort to me during the trying last year. So as you know, what's happening right now at the congregation is very different than usual because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But although our building is closed, our faith community is open. We hope all of you will plug into our Zoom gathering opportunities throughout the week, including Zoom social hour after every Sunday service. You can learn more about all that's happening at First Parish by visiting our website, uuneedham.org, or by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. To receive the Zoom links, please sign up for our weekly email newsletter, or by going to the website and clicking Get Involved newsletter, or sending your request to office@uuneedham.org. Our sincere hope is that these online services and connection opportunities will help us keep the distance required during this pandemic without losing much of the spiritual, emotional, and social closeness that we treasure in our faith community. If you are watching the service as it live streams, please take a moment now to say hello and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat box. Welcome again to everyone, and good morning.
Thank you, Anne. It's nice to be together again this Sunday morning. I'm Phil Lines, and I use the pronouns he, him, and his. I want to add to Anne's welcome a little explanation of what our worship service is going to be like this morning, because we are going on a congregational virtual field trip to Chicago. We have permission to reuse parts of the service held at the First Church Unitarian of Chicago back on May 9th of this year. It was Mother's Day and Pledge Sunday, so there are parts of the service that would probably not interest us here in Needham. But the reason I chose this service is because the church building, the ministers, and the congregation are noticeably different from ours, and yet their style of worship is very similar, and their sermon message resonates with our own congregation's conditions at this time. First Church Unitarian is located in a major city with a very diverse congregation. Its church building is a traditional stone edifice built in 1836 with a tall belfry. You will hear them start their service with their own ringing of the tower bell, just as we do. And since it was springtime, you'll notice they too take pride in their gardens. For the past 8 years, they have been led by Reverend David and Reverend Terry Schwartz, a dedicated married pair of ministers who take their commitment to their parishioners just as seriously as our own minister does. They even bring Pilot, their family St. Bernard, into their online services. I'm sure Reverend Katie would approve. At the close of our virtual field trip to Chicago, we will have our own time for an offering, and Joys and Concerns, and of course our social hour after the service, to which you are all cordially invited. So I'll add my own welcome to you all, with hopes that you enjoy this special service this morning.
Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Chicago's online worship. I am Beth Moss, your Religious Education Director, and I'm glad to be with you today in our online worship service. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults. A people of many beliefs and traditions bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but by the values we share and the mission to grow our souls and heal the world. Whether you are joining us online for the first time or you've worshiped with us hundreds of times, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. No matter how much money's in your pocket, no matter if you have a PhD, a GED, or no degree, you belong here. We are a people of many races and beliefs. We are a people of many genders and sexual orientations. All of you is sacred. All of you is welcome. You belong here. At this time, I invite you to center yourself, to settle yourself. And as the prelude begins, to prepare your heart and mind for worship.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no care of and of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no care of and of despair. Ours is no care of despair. Ours is no care of and of despair. Come, come, whoever you are, ours is no care of despair. 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 Come yet again, come.
Come in. Come in to this house, this virtual house of memory and of hope. Come in, whoever you are, whoever you are. Whether it's your first time in worship here or your 1,000th, come in. Whatever struggle you're living inside of right now, come set it down. The foundations of this place are strong enough to hold whatever trouble you have. Set it down. Entrust it into our shared hands. It'll wait for you. Come in. Whoever you are, come in. With disappointment and disillusionment and despair, come in the middle of disaster, with disability, with disturbed hearts and distant hopes. Come in, whoever you are. Come with disdain and disbelief and dysfunction and disconnection. You're in the right place, just as you are, beloved, No exceptions, every bit of you. You're in the right place to grow your soul and to heal the world. We've only just begun. Weary with years, weary with pandemic. We've only just begun, and fresh with hope. Alive with spring, we've only just begun. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you're called into being. Come, let us worship.
I invite you now to join in the reciting of our covenant.
The commitment that we make to each other about what it is we're doing here, why we gather, who we're becoming, and who we are.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I invite you now to greet one another warmly in the chat box of friendship.
Remembering it's public, say hello. Hey, Violet, you want to hear a story? I'm not sure. You have to hear a story regardless of whether you want to or not. This is the time of service. Come here, buddy. I'm going to tell you a story about sustaining the tree of life. Ready? You have to sit down though. Buddy, sit. There we go. There we go. Okay, so here's the story. Here's what it's about. The tree stood in the middle of the village, and its trunk was so large that it took 6 people or dogs holding hands or paws to reach all the way around. Its roots were strong and wide, much like you yourself, and the branches spread out over the village square, offering shelter from the rain, shade from the sun. It was full of fruit that was juicy, sweet, and plentiful, and the people of the village loved the tree. Children played beneath it, climbed its lowest branches. Adults shooed the dogs away from the trunk when they came too close. Young people knew that if you whispered your dreams to the tree, they were more likely to come true. And people who proclaimed their love or friendship beneath its branches found their relationships to be more nourishing. And elders discovered that their sweetest memories could be counted on when they were near this great tree. The tree had been witness to so much, and when the breeze blew through its branches, you could hear the echoes of generations, laughter and conversations and dreams and prayers, and babies and puppies. Animals loved the tree too. Rabbits lived in burrows beneath its roots, and squirrels and monkeys lived in the branches, and bats and birds flew in to eat the abundant fruit, and the tree just seemed to buzz with life. One day, a traveling merchant arrived in the village, and he rested in the shade, and he ate 2 pieces of this delicious fruit. This fruit is incredible, he said, super tasty. I would like to sell some of this in the next villages that I visit. Who owns this tree? And someone said, no one owns this tree. If anything, we belong to it. Well then, said the merchant, if no one owns this tree, then no one will mind if I pick all the fruit and take it with me to the next village to sell. Well, I mind, said the villager who had spoken before, and today I'm a keeper of the tree. Keeper of the tree. What do you mean? Said the merchant, keeper of the tree. And the villager said, we each take our turn. No one does it all the time. We could never own it, but we take our turn being here with the tree. We're here as protectors, as sustainers. That's ridiculous, said the merchant. This tree does not need you. You could just take whatever you want. The merchant said, I've read The Giving Tree. You just take and take until you have everything that you want. The tree's going to be fine. The villager couldn't be persuaded. The villager said, perhaps you have not read the end of The Giving Tree. This tree isn't like that. We don't come here to take from it, even though we do receive so much. We're keepers of the tree because this is where we're nourished. This place here together is where some of our most precious memories are. This is where our people have dreamed. This is where our people have dreamed and hoped, and where we come to remember who we want to become. Well, said the merchant, you may think that this tree is very special, but it still doesn't need you to sit with it. This is preposterous. Yeah, said the villager. Look, the tree may not need me, right? But what about the others who come by? Just this morning, I was able to sit with a woman whose heart was heavy with worry. And had I not been here, had this not been a place for her to come to, she would have had to carry that weight alone. And then this afternoon, a tired couple came by and sat with me and rested while their kids ran around like mad. And then an elder came by and we watched the birds in the branches together. And now you're here and you're confused about what this tree is and how to be with it. You came here hoping to take the parts of it that you liked. But imagine if you arrived and hadn't found anyone to talk with. You might have continued thinking that everything you do is all about you. But luckily for you, I'm here to let you know that when you care for the tree of life, my friend, it becomes about so much more than just you. And the merchant, Pilate, do you know what the merchant did? The merchant sat for a while in the shade, thinking about these ideas that felt new and a little challenging. And as the sun went down, he picked up his bag and headed out of town, whistling a song that he hadn't thought of in years. And on his way, he shared a smile with each person he met, his heart feeling strangely light and joyful. And the people of the village, they continued to sustain the tree of life, to care for one another, and to share their gifts with grace and gratitude. May it be so for us as well, tending the tree of the life of this community. What do you think, Pilate? Pilate is unimpressed. Pilate's expression is something like, yeah, I knew that already.
Please join me in prayer or meditation. Our words for meditation on this Mother's Day Sunday are adapted from The Wide Spectrum of Mothering by Amy Young. To those who gave birth this year to their first child, we celebrate with you. To those who lost a child this year, we mourn with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and wear the badge of food stain, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss through miscarriage, failed adoptions, or running away, we mourn with you. To those who walk the hard path of infertility, fraught with pokes, prods, tears, and disappointment, we walk with you. Forgive us when we say foolish things. We don't mean to make this harder than it is. To those who are foster moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. To those who have warm and close relationships with your children, we celebrate with you. To those who have disappointment, heartache, and distance with your children, we sit with you. To those who have lost their mothers this year, we grieve with you. To those who experienced abuse at the hands of your own mother, we acknowledge your experience. To those who lived through driving tests, medical tests, and the overall testing of motherhood, we are better for having you in our midst. To those who made the difficult decision to end a pregnancy, we stand with you in love. To those who are single and long to be married and mothering your own children, we mourn that life has not turned out the way you have longed for it to be. To those who step-parent, we walk with you on these complex paths. To those who envisioned lavishing love on grandchildren, yet that dream is not to be, we grieve with you. To those who will have emptier nests in the upcoming year, we grieve and rejoice with you. To those who place children for adoption, we commend you for your selflessness, and remember how you hold that child in your heart. To those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. This Mother's Day, we walk with you. Mothering is not for the faint of heart, and we have real warriors in our midst. We remember and honor you. I invite you now to type in the chat box the name of anyone you wish to hold in prayer in the loving support of this community. We hold and love these good souls and those who remain in the silence of our hearts, those remembered and those forgotten. Amen.
the Christian mystic and monk Thomas Merton called soul, this laden word, heavy word for some of us, he called soul true self. And he didn't mean that as a metaphor for like a secret back door to some weird theology. He called soul true self because for him, those two things were synonymous. Let's take him at his word. For Buddhists, soul is original nature, what you are, what the you of you is, before all the of the world gets in the way. Quakers call the soul the inner teacher, the inner light. Quakers say there's that of God in each of us in their language. And so they would traditionally address each other as thee and thou, not sir or ma'am or doctor or reverend, thee and thou only. Because in every face they met, it was a reminder that they weren't just meeting the flesh and blood of the person in front of them, but the soul spark of divine inside. Humanists, we talk about all this sometimes with unpoetic language, sometimes better. We call this soul stuff self-identity and living with integrity and reaching toward the unrealized, hidden wholeness that dwells in us. Now, Otis Redding called soul funky secular testifying. And though he was talking about something else, I think even he's pointing to that same experienced Christians and Buddhists and Quakers and humanists and Otis in good traditional universalist fashion. I think they're all pointing toward the same reality, the same lived reality, and using different words in different ways to talk about what that is. Part of our task as Unitarian Universalists is to be translators and to understand what is the experience that these other traditions are pointing to. The experience, the lived experience. Because the truth is, I really don't particularly care what name you give this thing. I don't know how much language games like that are really important. At the end of the day, the precise terminology and thoroughgoing definition of soul doesn't matter to me as much as that we are naming it and speaking to it and leaning into it and looking for it inside of ourselves, however we talk about that. Terry and I say sometimes that our mission here, our purpose, our focus, the compass heading that we follow, our mission is, as a church, to grow our souls and to heal the world in community. These two things, the inner work and the outer work, together, united. The soul that wants to keep us rooted in our own being. The soul that wants to keep us connected to the community in which we find life, understanding that relationships are necessary for thriving, no matter how loudly the world says go it alone. The soul wants to tell us the truth about ourselves and our world and the relationship between the two, whether that truth is easy or hard to hear, funky, secular, testifying. This tree of life, this building and community around which we gather, owned by none of us and by all of us, is a space to come back to our soul over and over and over again against all the pressures of the world that blindly conspire to separate us from ourselves. Years and years ago, when I was exploring teaching, I did a year student teaching. I taught freshman English freshman history. I overheard two high school freshmen talking to each other in a study hall the very first week of school. These two kids had been there maybe a total of 2, possibly 3 days. And one of them says to the other, "I can't wait till we're seniors. They can do so much. We're like, ugh." I can't even capture the depth of emotion in the phrase, we're like, There's so much meaning. There's no, Shakespeare and the King James Bible together could not put together the eloquence of language contained in, they can do so much. We're like, ugh. The belief that what they had and experienced right now was worthless. That they had none of the benefits, the advantages, the privileges, the wholeness and happiness that would surely come in time. They weren't adults like those high school seniors were. There's a disgust with the future in We're Like Ugh. But more than that, in that phrase, there is a total trust in the future, a belief in the future, an expectation in the future that they would make it to some point and arrive at last. Which we can laugh at because most of us at age 18 discovered it was the 21-year-olds who had it made. And then at 21, it started to look like the 25-year-olds had the good life. And then at 25, we looked back fondly on freshman year of high school when things were so simple, if only we could go back there again. This promise of future wholeness is tantalizingly close and just out of reach. Tantalizing. Tantalus in the Greek myths was cursed in the afterlife with terrible hunger and thirst. He stood in a stream with grapes hanging just out of reach. And when he would reach for them, they would shrink back. And when he would bend to drink from the water, it would flee from his lips. Tantalizingly close. And always out of reach. Wholeness. Doneness. Arrival. The high school English is staying in high school. The high school English book, The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald's book, not just for high schoolers, is in large part about just this idea. In the closing lines, Fitzgerald writes that Gatsby, this protagonist who was constantly striving, trying to be more, do more, have more, he believed in the green light. Says Fitzgerald, he believed in the future that year by year recedes before us. And it eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster. Tomorrow we will stretch our arms out further, and one fine morning. And then in the text, he just trails off with a long dash. And then one fine morning, the author lost in that reverie of how complete life will be at that arrival. Part of the point of the book, of course, being that it's impossible to actually get there. The future, year by year, recedes before us, but just ahead, so close you can almost touch it, just out of reach, the promised future, a better job, a bit more money, pay off the credit cards, have that little place in the country, get back into public, reopen again, take the masks off, herd immunity, come back together again. These things may have eluded us before, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch our arms out further, and one fine morning, but the future recedes before us year by year. And if you measure your life against that vision, the one that lives in the silence after the words trail off, you never arrive. It slips back no matter how far you travel. We can fall into that same trap as a congregation. I think about that these days with reopening. As we start to figure out how will we gather back in person again, it's tempting to think that this moment will come, as if instead of a gradual and continual process, instead of a slow reopening of the city and the world, even as things get worse elsewhere, as if there's going to be a day, a moment, a finish line, and we'll cross it, and we will have arrived, and everything will be back to normal again, or the way it was, or the way that we hope it will be. We can fall into this trap as a congregation of being so focused on that receding finish line that we stop being where we are right now. It's true, too, in the culture change work that you all are deeply engaged with right now in the congregation. For nearly 2 years, the board, your good relations team, and so many other leaders in the congregation have said that one of the most critical things we can do as a congregation, as big and substantial and effortful as reconstructing this place and doing the capital campaign projects, is reconstructing the way that we do conflict with each other. And so over the course of 2 years, the Good Relations Committee has worked hard, has brought in so many other voices from the congregation, seeking feedback, seeking input, looking at best practices from other churches around how will we be together? How will we dwell together in peace? Not as if that will come all at once in some distant day on some far shore when we'll all just do it. But instead, they've tended to the infrastructure, the nuts and bolts, all the 10,000 daily things that shape and create culture, defining process for what do we do when we have arguments with each other. The board set process around what do we do if behavior is so egregious that it violates our agreements with each other? How do people come back in again after something like that? The peace circles have been a way to deepen our connection with each other. The covenant of right relations as a congregation this year, the work that you'll vote on in just a few weeks, that's slow, steady work. That's work that doesn't have a finish line because it recedes before us year by year. And our call, our invitation, is not to all at once, or even in 6 months or 6 years, become a congregation where, there's no conflict ever and everyone does the right thing all the time. Our charge and the work is to say, and everybody here is just as human as people everywhere else. And of course we're going to mess up and fall short. Of course we are. That's what it is to be human. But though we've broken our vows 1,000 times, we come yet again, come to be in community, to tend the shared tree of life, instead of being always almost there, where the end point is some shining city with golden towers of peace and love and happiness. We're called to the more difficult, holy, and ordinary work of rebuilding brick by brick, of constantly tending to our community the same way that you all volunteers tend to the flower beds around the church. Come, come, whoever you are, the hymn, the words from the Sufi poet Rumi, Muslim poet Rumi. In the hymnal, we sing, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, come, come, whoever you are. But the line of the poem in the original that's not printed in our hymnal says, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come nonetheless. I hear in that the acknowledgement that to be human in this world is to fall short. And rather than casting our lot with the vision of that future which year by year recedes before us, rather than dwelling in the fantasy of future wholeness, the invitation is much simpler and more difficult than that, which is come back to right now. Come back not to how the relationships might be years from now, but come back to how they are now. Come back to who you are now. Find the soul again, that shy soul deep inside. You've made it this far on the way. And I hope that this invitation doesn't sound over pessimistic. Sometimes when Buddhists talk about suffering being part of the reality of the world, people say, oh, well, this is a really pessimistic religion. I don't think it's true for Buddhists, and I don't think it's true for us either, as we do this work of growing our soul and healing the world in community. We face the reality that all we have is this present moment and the work that we can do together. And that spirit is profoundly hopeful because it's attending to the tree of life. It's tending to the tree of this community rather than waiting for how big the tree is going to be some far distant future day. We'll sit in its shade together today, tell stories, and sing together, and eat its fruit, and together be keepers of this community. Amen.
Strong, the rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. This thought of all the world through chill will keep you warm. He shall walk softly through his rooms, touching your lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into a shrine. With laughter drown the shout, and holy sheltering walls of him, within be strong to keep it out, and all love
This congregation has been supported by the volunteered time and treasure of its members and friends since its founding in 1711. In those 300 years, this community has seen some tough times, but we're still here. This is the time in our service when we, the modern stewards of this church, offer to give what we can to build and sustain the world we envision. For the entire summer, our plate collection will be divided equally between First Parish in Needham and the Needham Community Council, which is a local nonprofit which runs, among other things, our local food pantry. Its customer list has dramatically grown during this pandemic. Our neighbors are depending on this service now more than ever. To donate to today's offering, you can use one of 3 different methods. For those of you with a smartphone, you can use our new Text to Give program. Just put the phone number 73256 and text to that number UU Needham space plate space then the $sign with the amount you'd like to give, all in one message. If you want your money applied to your pledge, please text instead that same phone number with UU Needham Pledge 21 or Pledge 22, depending on whether you want it applied to the fiscal year just completed or the new fiscal year. Follow that with a $sign and the amount you'd like to give. If you'd prefer to mail First Parish a check, please make it out to First Parish in Needham, put the date of this service and the word collection in the memo line, and then mail your check to 23 Dedham Avenue, Needham, Massachusetts, 02492. Alternatively, if you want the money applied to your pledge for either the fiscal year just finished or the upcoming year, put FY21 or FY22 in that memo line instead. The last and perhaps easiest method to use is our website, uuneedham.org, for making your donation. There is a giving button in the upper right corner with a drop-down menu where you'll find an entry labeled Donate Now. Following that link and signing into your Realm account, you'll be able to fill in your donation information and choose a recipient fund for its destination, such as plate collection. As you listen now to Melissa Sky Eagle perform Give Thanks on both piano and electric organ, please take a few moments to give what you can and know that it is greatly appreciated.
Now is the time to share our joys and concerns. No joys and concerns were submitted to Becky Sebens by, can you hear me? No joys and concerns were submitted to Becky Sebens by midnight of Thursday earlier this week. If you didn't, but would like to share a joy or concern with the community this morning, you're invited to enter your message into the chat box. As our services is live streamed to YouTube, we can't guarantee that your message will stay within the First Parish community, but you're always welcome to reach out to Reverend Michelle Walsh or the Pastoral Care Associate of the Week, who is me this week, Gail Lehman, for pastoral care or to share more privately. I'll wait just a moment to see if there's anything in the chat box. So for all the joys and sorrows that we still hold in our hearts, and acknowledging the prayers of our neighbors near and far, we place a stone in the water. May there be peace in each of your homes as we remember that even though we are apart, we are deeply connected.
As we close our worship today, please remember to keep a careful eye out for emails from First Parish and follow us on social media. When today's service ends, you are all invited to stay with us for our Zoom social hour. Please remember that if you fall ill or need any pastoral support, to reach out to our pastoral care team and caring crew via phone or email. We always extinguish our chalice with words promising to carry its flame in our hearts until we are together again. And I know that we are all deeply committed to that promise until we are together again in person. As we extinguish our chalice today, please join me from home in saying these words written by Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Elizabeth Selly Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope is shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love is shining.